All right, welcome back, everyone. This is Ebonie again, a.k.a. Fit Mom Diva of Simplicity House Style, and today we have Miss Madison with us. How are you, Madison?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for taking time on this holiday to spend with us. She is going to deliver some awesome jewels with us, you guys. So if there's any chance that you can stick around to the end, I would so appreciate it. And as a form of appreciation, I'm going to offer you a complimentary gift. So stick around and let's see what Miss Madison wants to share with us today. So Madison, so we get to know you a little bit better. Can you start us off by sharing one motivational quote that really inspires you, encourages you, and gets you going?
Yeah, I mean, I have a journal that I write all of my things in that motivate me or just like in general. So the quote that I would choose would be, where you are is a result of who you were, but where you end up depends entirely on who you choose to be from this moment forward. And it just kind of reminds me that even though I might have some missteps or some things that, might have held me back or I might have been embarrassed about, who I choose to be moving forward is really who will define who I am instead of who I used to be, I guess, in the past.
Yeah, and we're all changing and evolving as time goes on. And we talked a little bit about how I was in high school, and I'm still, I still have a lot of the same personality. We all have the same personality for the most part. We might change different aspects of our personality based on learned behavior and, just growing, into a more mature adult. But I definitely see how you, in one season, can be a totally different type of individual in the way you relate to others. And as you develop new experiences, you begin to relate to others in a different way. And you're totally right. It's like we're the person that we are now based off of our previous experiences, but that can all change as time progresses because we're constantly growing. It's always a good thing to grow. Yeah. And I know that sometimes it's not easy for us to, follow our path, and it's always an adventure. And my life is always something new. It doesn't really even matter how much I plan sometimes. Sometimes I'll plan things out and something totally different happens. But it's all good. I plan just to have some set of focus steps. But for the most part, I embrace the journey. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about a time in your life where you didn't necessarily see the light at the end of the tunnel and you had to overcome some obstacles, some challenges, some unforeseen circumstances that you're like, where in the world did this come from? But at the end of the day, you were able to see your goal or your dream to fruition.
Yeah. Well, just to note, I still am kind of in a transitional period where I feel like I'm just now finding out who I really am. So when I was a sophomore in college, which was like 5 years ago, my father passed away at the beginning of the semester, and we were super close. And it was something for me that completely changed my life, just because the passing of a parent is something that no one really is prepared for. And especially since I was so young and didn't really know what that meant for me in terms of what I was going to do next, it kind of put me in a place where, while I used to be this super outgoing and confident person for a while I was still in school, I kind of lost who I was. My identity was built up a lot by my parents, and especially my father, who was super supportive of everything that I did, was huge into like the arts, and that was something that we shared, just like in common. And after he passed away, I wasn't eating, I wasn't taking care of myself, I wasn't going to class, and then I eventually ended up withdrawing from that semester and coming back the next semester in the spring. And if it weren't for my, I guess, support system at home, my mom, my godparents, and also like my friends that I made in college who, while I was still there, were basically like bringing me food and forcing me to take showers and like really just like helping me through every step of the way when they saw that I couldn't help myself. If it weren't for them, I have no idea if I would have seen the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that's when, after my dad passed away, was when I really started taking mental health into like seriously. Because I mean, I went to therapy as a kid. And then after he passed away, I got back into therapy. But that's when, once I realized how much therapy helped me and how important it was to my success now, that's when I think I really started to realize that taking care of myself and taking care of my mental health was important in terms of my own success.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And it's always, you know, a life-changing experience when there's a death in the family of someone close to you too, because then it's like the times that you would have normally called that person or hung out with that person or seek advice from that person. You're like, wait a minute, the person's not there.
Yeah.
Especially when they had a unique approach to relating with you. Then you're like, well, who do I relate with in this same way? I haven't experienced in my life someone very close to me in that way passing away, but I have experienced family members that have passed away where there were other family members that were closer to them. And they all say the same thing. They're like, you know, I leaned on that person for X, Y, Z. And I don't know who else to lean on for that particular thing because they helped me in their own unique way that nobody else has been able to do.
Yeah.
So that's definitely an experience that you want support around you and the right type of support around you when you're going through that.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Talk a little bit about how people can gain a good support system when they're going through transition or they're trying to realize a particular dream that maybe sometimes only they can even really see the vision. They try to go through something and maybe they feel like the people around them can't necessarily help them in the way that they feel like they need the best support. Those people may even want to support, but they're not doing it in a way that is fruitful for that particular person's endeavors.
Yeah. I guess, well, one thing that I did for myself, just being a creative and being someone who was always surrounded by that type of energy of just like unconditional support and love. I think that if you aren't finding or if you're having trouble finding support, it's really important to pay attention to the people you are surrounding yourself with. One thing that I'm really big on is energy. So if the energy is not there, if it's not something that I feel is pouring into me, or if I'm able to pour into someone else with my energy, then it needs to be found somewhere else. I'm really big on, if there's someone that I see or that I'm motivated by, or someone who's doing something that I want to do something similar, I just reach out to them.
Yeah.
And the worst that can happen is they don't respond to you, or they're not interested in, having a conversation. But most of the time, just reaching out to someone who is doing something that you're interested in also doing. People love talking about themselves.
Yeah.
An informational interview is what my mentor calls it. And just reaching out to them and saying, hey, like, if you have, a couple minutes, I'd like to ask you a few questions about how you got into what you're doing and, what struggles you had, or any advice you might have for someone who's trying to come up in whatever industry or whatever field you're trying to kind of dabble in.
Right.
I think it's also really important to be honest with yourself and others in the way in which you communicate. Communication is key when it comes to anything, any type of relationship, whether it be personal, intimate, business, whatever. If you can't communicate well with people, they are not going to be able to read your mind. So if you have someone in your life that wants to support you, but they don't know how, or you're not really feeling that support, and you know that the intention is good and it's there, just communicate to them and say, hey, look, like, I understand you're trying to support me and I appreciate it. This is what you can do to make me feel that support, or this is what you can do for me that will push me in the direction that I need to be pushed into.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned informational interviews too, because a lot of times, particularly when I'm speaking to college age students and they're trying to figure out what they want to do after they complete their degree, a lot of times they're a little bit confused as to what direction to go. But that's because they haven't necessarily spent enough time really understanding the industry and talking to enough people that actually work in the industry.
Yeah.
And I always say LinkedIn, for example, is an awesome social media platform where you can reach out to people and find out a little bit more about what they like and what they dislike about that particular career choice. And then a lot of times you're going to get more information from that than you will doing a Google search where it just looks pretty on paper. You know, you're actually hearing it from the horse's mouth, the person that's in the industry 40 plus hours a week. So I love that approach, and you can utilize that approach with almost anything. And you can honestly use that approach with, say, for instance, it wasn't even career related. Say, for instance, you just wanted to talk a little bit more with mothers of young toddlers, for example, before you decide whether or not you want to become pregnant at this time in your life. You know, just getting out there and talking to people that have actually experienced what you're about to experience and see if it's something that you want to do is so key. The other thing that you mentioned is communication. I think that is so key too. And I have to be very cognizant of how I'm communicating with certain people. We all communicate differently. That's the funny thing about it. And sometimes what works for one person doesn't work for another person. There are some people in my life that I honestly don't have to have a lot of direct conversation with for almost like months on end. And when we speak again, we pick up from where we left off, and there's no hurt feelings involved. They don't care. They're like, we're both living our lives, you know? But then there are other people where if I'm not communicating with them in a certain way on a weekly basis, it's like, oh my God, what happened to Ebony? Maybe you hate me. No, I don't hate you. I'm just busy, you know? So I think, learning how to communicate is so important. And then just being open and honest. Like, you're upset with something, just tell the person you're upset. A lot of times, you know, sometimes people will say to me, oh, I thought you were upset with me because you weren't talking to me. No, I was just busy. You can ask me that though, you know. So I love that you brought that up as well. Just telling people how they can best support you. Sometimes the best way for people to support me, for example, may be different based on what their skill set is too. So depending on what your goal is, what your vision is, what your dream is, everybody can help you in a different way too, just because we all have different gifts and different talents and strengths. Yeah. Always keep that in mind as well. Can you talk a little bit about how we can feed our spirits a little bit better too? Because I feel like we get so busy at times, and sometimes at least overwhelming frustration, where we don't have enough time in our life to self-reflect and really figure out what our next move is, because we're just so tired, exhausted, taking care of ourselves, taking care of everybody else. So what are some ways that you've provided yourself with self-care, and what are some challenges that you faced with that?
Yeah. So about 2 years ago, I went through a terrible breakup and I, in that moment of just like, you know, I guess kind of grieving, I decided that I was going to be very intentional about the way in which I gave myself to other people. I used to be the type of person to put everyone before me, and in a way I still am, in terms of putting my own things on the back burner and trying to, you know, put out everyone else's fires. But one thing that I've learned over the past couple of years is that another person's fire cannot always be my emergency. I have made time, and I know like everyone's tired, everyone has a lot going on, but like making the time for yourself is what is most important when it comes to self-care. Self-care for me looks completely different than self-care for my best friend or self-care for my boyfriend. For him, it might be playing video games. For me, it's making sure that, you know, it might be extending my wash day routine, or, you know, creating like a skincare regimen that I actually stick to. And one of the things that I have, I guess, made a habit for myself is journaling. Journaling for me has been extremely therapeutic. And especially when I am like going through different things, or if everything's going great in my life, like it's nice to look back and see those different seasons and how they affected me, how I was feeling at those times, what I was going through, just so that I can see my own personal growth. Kind of as like a reminder to be like, okay, like, you know, like you might not have it all together, but at least we're not the same person that we used to be, you know, 2, 3, 4 months, years, even days ago. And I think one of my biggest challenges when it comes to self-care is really, like you said, taking the time and making the time. And especially in 2018, one of my biggest goals was to just start saying no to things. Realizing that no is a full sentence, and I can't make myself available to everyone if I'm not all the way together. And just hoping that, you know, the people in my life understand that. And also the same thing with communication, just communicating to them that, look, I need to take care of myself, and I can't not only love other people without loving myself, but I'm not going to be all the way together to be there for you if I'm not there for myself first. And that's pretty much it. I mean, I think it's important to make self-care, or at least in a time where, you know, there's so much going on right now. And a lot of people might feel like they're being pulled in different directions. And especially for young people coming out of college, no one really knows what they're doing. We're all pretty much just winging it anyways. So you might as well have fun while you're doing it, and taking care of yourself is the first step to really understanding who you are and making it, you know, I get a little bit closer to your goals.
Yeah. And I think it's totally okay to wing it, because when I came out of college, I didn't know what kind of job I was going to take. I happened to come across jobs that I thought were pleasurable, but it wasn't something that I didn't know what I was doing every step of the way. It happened. That's what it did. It just happened.
Yeah.
And, you know, looking back on it, I feel like, you know, all of the experiences that I was involved in and experiencing helped get me to where I am today. So I always say there's a reason, season, and lifetime for everything in our life. And some of those positions, you know, they were great for the time being, and they paid well for the time being, and the schedule was great for the time being. And then as I grew and had children, for example, I needed a different schedule and a different job. And as I moved to other states, I needed something else, you know. But you could take all of those experiences with you and use it and craft it into where you currently are.
Yeah.
And I strongly, strongly, strongly believe that if we can just take at least 15 minutes a day, or 15 minutes every other day, just doing something that we love. You talked about your boyfriend loving video games. So self-care for him could be video games. Self-care for somebody else could be going to the gym. Self-care for somebody else could be just going to take a walk, or looking at all 4 walls sometimes. you know, whatever it is that you find meaningful and pleasurable. Not something that, you know, someone told you to do because it's supposed to be self-care, but something that you actually enjoy. I want for everyone listening to share this content out with anyone that you believe can benefit. And the reason why is because sometimes people just need to hear something a different way from somebody else. And I found a lot of times that ladies particularly, they feel like they're all alone in some of their situations that they're in. And they're never all alone. There are always people out there that they can talk to, that they can socialize with, and they'll find out that they're not all alone. And one of the things I always say, people that know me will know that I say this all the time, is that there are over 1 billion people. There are billions of people on this earth. You can find at least one person that you can connect with that's going to support you and help you in your endeavors. The way that Madison and I reached out to each other was via social media. If it wasn't for us just, taking a step forward and communicating with each other, you would not be listening to this interview today. So there's always at least one person out there that can help support you in your endeavors. And if you can't find anybody, you can definitely join my Nutrition for Busy Women Facebook group. That link is in the description box. And for doing so, at the beginning of this interview, I told you guys that I had a complimentary gift for you. For doing so, I'll reward you with free resources and a free assessment so that you can really understand what your gifts are and what your talents are, your strengths are, and how you're going to be able to infuse that into your service in this world. A lot of times people are very successful in their jobs, but they learned how to do something well. They're not necessarily finding it meaningful and purposeful, fulfilling. So if you need help in any of those areas, I have assessment tools and resources that will help you build a foundation to get to that next step. Madison, do you have any last words of encouragement? Anything that you would like to say to the ladies listening that you would love to hear? You were, say for instance, in a stuck state of mind where you're like, well, I hear what you're saying, Madison and Ebonie, but you don't know my situation, and I'm probably going to turn this thing off and I'm still going to go about my stuff life.
I think one thing that I would say would be nothing lasts forever. So you may feel stuck now, but continue pouring into yourself, continue doing things that make you happy, continue making time for yourself and self-reflection. And you will see that as time progresses, things will be changing in your life. When you make time for positivity, and really make time on building yourself and who you are, even if you don't know where to start, getting like those resources, like what you talked about, and really just learning what you're good at and what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, that's what's most important, and just going for it. If you have an idea about something you want to do, but you're afraid, that should be the motivation that pushes you. Because if something that you're interested in doing doesn't scare you, then you're not thinking big enough.
Yes.
People are willing to stand behind people who are passionate about what they're doing. And don't be afraid to take that next step, because the people before you who were successful in what they did weren't afraid to do that. So you shouldn't be either.
Yes, thank you so much for those last words of encouragement. Hopefully you ladies will take that to heart. I always remind myself of those as well. There are certain things that I might want for myself in a certain season that later on I decide, no, I really don't want that. And it's for various reasons. But there are certain things that just stick with me. Like I just can't not put it to the back of my mind. So taking those baby steps to be able to say, okay, I'm going to make this happen, and being okay with it being baby steps and not like an overnight success. Totally okay. Don't get into this mindset of, I have to get it done in 2 weeks. If I don't get it done in 2 weeks, I'm a loser. Some things take some time and effort.
Yeah.
So just like baking a cake, would you want that cake when it's halfway done? No, you want it when it's at its completion. So be okay with baby steps sometimes as well. Thank you, Madison. I appreciate you so much. And for those of you listening, if you want to share your story, you want to share your successes and your challenges, I invite you to connect with me as well. And we will definitely get your word out there to encourage other ladies. Thank you so much for taking time. Share this content out with someone that you believe that it could benefit. And no matter where you are in this world, always remember to live a life full of meaning and purpose. I'll connect with you soon.